And I want to say from the outset that there is no satisfaction in denouncing people or embarrassing them or anything like that. This is not about that, guys. This is about the sort of standards that we should expect from the people in the highest positions of authority in the land. They have to be beyond reproach. When they are engaged in outright criminal activity, I mean absolutely malicious criminal activity, where they collude with other people so as to destroy the lives of innocent others, or at least persons such as myself who stand up and speak the truth. When they do that, we have to denounce them, because one of the only weapons we have against this sort of wickedness, institutionalized wickedness, is publicity. Hello friends. Well, today I'm going to keep it quite simple. I'm just going to read you out a 2-page letter, and I ask you to bear with me. And this is all about the recent shambolic criminal activity up at the Four Courts. Now, the letter more or less speaks for itself, and for those of you who are interested more in the details, I ask you please to go and read affidavits number 22 and 23, which we have tried to lodge up at the central office in the Four Courts, but believe it or not, we are being shut out completely from any access to the courts. They will not accept our documents. They're being returned to us in the post. And meanwhile, this fiasco trundles forwards, where they hope, undoubtedly, to put me back in jail, to shut down the Integrity Ireland project at any costs. Anyway, please stand by, guys. To Michael MacGrath, in your role as a judge of the High Court, all previous correspondence, notifications and affidavits refer. We'll be relatively brief this time, Michael, and yes, this letter will be published. So let's see if you, an eminent judge of the High Court, who variously gets co-opted unlawfully to issue contrived judgments against lay litigants and other High Court judges who you do not outrank, so as to suit the interests of the cabal. Let's see if you will even dare to consider suing us for defamation, or for harassment, or for scandalizing the courts, or for some other cooked up garbage contrivance that diverts the blame away from the real offenders. Because it will give us untold satisfaction to thrash these matters out in public view, so the Irish people can see the calibre of the pretentious, predatory, so-called elites, such as your very good self, of course, who obviously think they are above the law and free from accountability. Your performance these past couple of weeks was not only pathetic and disgraceful, it was, as you very well know, utterly sneaky and unlawful. A series of cowardly and arrogant stunts, devious in the extreme, and about as stupid a move as anyone in your position could have made right now. As disappointing and depressing as it is to have to chastise yet another judge for being an absolute disgrace to his profession, we should perhaps thank you for your latest panicked attempts to protect the cabal, because at last the Irish public are beginning to see what a shabby shower of moral deviance and politically appointed sociopaths are sneaking into the judiciary. Your personal deviousness and willingness to abandon even any pretense of propriety or due process is now exposed for all to see. And you can't be feeling too comfortable about that. Not when you are now facing more criminal charges on top of those already pending against you, a bill for tens of thousands of euros, and another formal application to the Dáil for your immediate impeachment. Whether or not we will also pursue injunctions against you and an appeal to the Supreme Court based upon all of the criminality you're indulging in is only a matter of time and logistics. But a little word of advice, Michael. You are not above the law. And whoever told you that you were, simply because you've invested into the great lie, probably needs a good talking to. Your silk robes and clipped tones won't save you now. and whether you realise it or not, your judicial career is already over. In fact, it's not only over, but if we have our way, you will be spending quite some time getting first-hand experience of how the other half lives. You know, those stupid Irish peasants that you and your colleagues sit in judgment of every day, even though those same commoners carry a certain fundamental honesty which is completely alien to you and to several of your sociopathic confederates. The Supreme Court of Nigeria put it succinctly when they said, quote, "A corrupt judge is the greatest vermin, the greatest curse ever to afflict any nation." This being just one of the opening quotes in the best-selling book that you feature so prominently in, namely, Criminality in the Irish Courts and the Absence of the Rule of Law, which we do trust you have read by now. Because that text, above all else, will be how you and your corrupt protagonists will be remembered. The days of an elitist, morally bankrupt, self-serving criminal cabal running the show are over, Michael. Your best option now is to rethink the wisdom of continuing your nefarious criminal collusions and sneaky deceptions up at the High Court, and instead to start to ponder how life would be if you simply did your very well paid job with some modicum of honour, honesty, dignity, integrity and self-respect, instead of investing in the great lie. Now, wouldn't that be a welcome change? You may believe you have all of the power and control and authority over state institutions sufficient to protect you from the consequences of your criminal actions. But we're here to tell you, Michael, that you do not. Not anymore. What you have to ponder right now, Mr. McGrath, is what exactly does Manning mean by this? Well, Michael, as always, and we understand that this may be an alien concept to you, we endeavour to tell the truth and to prove that truth and then enforce that truth as best we can under the law. You and whatever other complicit geniuses up at the DPP's office and the four courts were foolish in the extreme starting up this criminal nonsense again. You were even more stupid to think you would get away with it this time, because no matter what it costs, we will never submit to threats or intimidation or to this level of official wickedness and malice. We were actually content to let things go while we worked on the People's Tribunal and other solutions such as the Integrity Ireland asseverations to combat you and what you and your ilk have been at for years. The cowardly scheming and plotting as to how you can suck ever more out of the trusting Irish public without letting the mask of propriety slip. We thought you would have worked it out by now, Michael. There is a reason, possibly beyond your closeted, institutionalized comprehension, as to why every single devious, malicious or diabolical act directed at us backfires so spectacularly and eventually explodes in your faces. The great God here is not money, nor power, nor faux prestige based on a debauched career in lies and criminal cover-ups, although we understand that this often seems to be the case in this upside-down world. Neither does this have anything really to do with the law. No. This is far more fundamental than that. This is simply a case of good versus evil and truth versus lies. And guess which side you are on right now. The great and enduring power that you are confronting and challenging, Michael, is not just us or the Integrity Ireland Association. It is that of the original divine, a truly unassailable truth and justice embodiment that cannot be intimidated, bullied, distracted or chased away, no matter how many planned conspiracies or seedy cover-ups are scheduled. You people need to respect who we are and what we represent. You then need to return to your privileged positions as respected judges of the land and simply do your jobs. And it all starts with honesty. Meet us on an honest plane and you will get all the respect and cooperation you deserve. But lie to us, try to deceive and trick us, Michael, and abuse your privileged positions? No, we won't deal with that. And we won't dance with the devil either. Because that is the road to perdition that will put those who do on the dark side of history. Your behaviour, your intentions and your motives have now been made public. They are so far beyond the remit of decent principled behaviour as to warrant no further comment from us other than to openly denounce you as a moral disgrace, an insidious pretender and a liar, a criminal miscreant, absent conscience, morals, ethics or scruples, who has had the brazen audacity to think that he was going to get away with this latest criminal enterprise. Accountability can take many forms, Michael, but when you are the sinner, you don't get to choose. So, you will please stand by for receipt of a summons to the Peoples Tribunal of Ireland, which, if you have any genuine notion or respect for the law, or if you value what's left of your legacy, you will comply with or immediately resign. So please, do the right thing voluntarily before we must, respectfully, lawfully compel you to do so, trusting the position is clear. Now, I'd also like, folks, to wrap this up with a short extract from the end of my latest affidavit, which we are trying, without success so far, to actually get lodged up at the central office at the Four Courts. We are being absolutely stonewalled across the board, and this is a sign that one of two things are happening here. Either, number one, they have no answer to what we're doing and they are in a blind panic trying to protect these criminal miscreants up there at the Four Courts, who really should be in jail. There's no other place for them but to be in jail. That is, if Article 40 means anything, that all of us are equal under the law. The other alternative is that they intend to barrel on regardless. And I mean regardless of scores of criminal acts now being committed by the court service, by the DPP's office, by the judges concerned, etc., etc. We've caught them out in all of them. We've followed all the procedures. They're the ones who are not. And this last paragraph coming out of the affidavit should help you to understand where we're coming from here. But the second option, as I said, is that they're going to barrel on regardless and try and use these false and fraudulent procedures to somehow get me back into Castlereagh, where I imagine I would be staying far longer than would be lawful. Here's that paragraph. I say that it all comes down to one rather obvious but increasingly ignored fundamental premise. If we are obeying the law, but McGrath, Justice McGrath, isn't, then who really has jurisdiction? If we are abiding by due process, but McGrath and his collaborators aren't, then which of us is entitled to the protection of the courts? If Justice Michael MacGrath and his associates are definitively engaged in provable criminal acts under cover of secrecy and subterfuge, while we declare our lawful position loudly from the rooftops, then who really should be subject to the attentions of the Gardai and the DPP? If we are making valid applications to the statutory authorities according to the rules, while McGrath and his collaborators indulge in rampant rule breaking, then why isn't the Justice Committee, the Minister for Justice and the Chief Justice doing anything about it? Indeed, why are they silently, through the effective abandonment of their respective mandates, lining up furtively behind the lawbreakers? And finally, if McGrath and his colleagues, his associates and subordinates in the establishment have a well-established track record of fraud, deceit and dishonesty, and of the deliberate misuse of the mainstream media via cultivated, tame reporters to surreptitiously spread lies and propaganda, which they do, whilst we, on the other hand, are wholly and openly invested in the truth and the facts, then, in a country that prides itself as a modern liberal democracy and as a constitutional republic, then who really should be getting first or at least equal access to the media, let alone having a private and exclusive arrangement to the deliberate exclusion of the whole truth? And this in particular context of the fact that McGrath went ahead with an unannounced hearing last Tuesday. Apparently, or clearly, the Irish Times were either present or they had the document that issued during those proceedings in advance, while I, the applicant and the person who actually started those proceedings, wasn't even told about it. And if you check online, you'll see that article, guys. Wholly tendentious article. That means it's been written in such a way, it's skewed, it's misleading, and the reporter, Miss Mary Carolan, apparently, didn't even bother, it seems, to check with me as to the truth of the article. Okay, now we've already put the Irish Times on notice that they're going to be facing legal proceedings over that. They've already sent a panicked response claiming that the article is an accurate rendition of what was read out in court that day. So either they were there, either they had someone who was there, while we were being told that this was being done remotely. Well, actually, we weren't told until after it happened, but it happened remotely in a location outside of Dublin at an undisclosed location, not undisclosed to the Irish Times, it seems. Thus we see how the establishment is in cahoots with the mainstream media. And it shouldn't be that way, guys. They're supposed to be the fourth estate. They're supposed to be our last open, independent check on the corruption that's going on in high places. In confidence that we have now laid out more than sufficient grounds to challenge what has been going on in these combined cases of late, we therefore respectfully request, and indeed respectfully demand under the law, that the purported judgment of Mr. Justice Michael MacGrath of May the 18th last be immediately set aside and struck out on the grounds that it is yet again a scandalous contrivance, a monstrous deception and a fraudulent issuance, constructed with malice and criminal intentions, and that this matter be referred to 1. The Garda Commissioner, 2. to the Judicial Conduct Committee, and 3. to the Houses of the Oireachtas by the Superior Courts, for the purposes of raising formal inquiries into the astounding levels of criminal hypocrisy ongoing in these particular cases, with a view to initiating whatever proceedings are appropriate, to include judicial impeachment proceedings as necessary, to ensure the protection of the rule of law in this state. And please listen carefully to this final paragraph, guys. Alternatively, and this is all about truth and lies, guys. Alternatively, we are seeking a simple declaration of fact or an order out of the superior courts that clarifies once and for all on the record for everyone to see and understand that members of the Irish public are in fact obliged to engage with known criminals and wrongdoers in the pay of the state, and must participate and collaborate in those unlawful activities when instructed or directed to do so, even when the same is in open defiance of the law, of truth, and of conscience. Further, that the public must comply under pain of punitive consequences if they do not, and which said consequences, whether overt or covert, whether conspicuous or concealed, or whether obvious or clandestine, as the case may be, may include any and all manner of officially sponsored, or officially facilitated, or officially tolerated repercussions that constitute clear and open violations of our inalienable and fundamental rights under the law and the Constitution, in total abeyance of the rule of law. So I will leave you at that, folks, reminding you that the evidence of wholesale criminal insidious activity going on up in the corridors of power, and the fact that none of the systems that we have in place to hold them to account are working. None of them. You know, we've got to realise what's happening, guys. And if you want the full details, guys, I'd encourage you, please, to read the whole affidavit. I'm going to put up links online. They have now been served on the court service. We've got stamped and sealed copies, so they're on the record as public documents. Okay, and like I said, some of them are a little bit of a lengthy read, but the contents within them, guys, is absolutely important that everybody understands what it is we're up against here. Sorry guys, just before we go, this message was just sent over to me. Now this is not good news. I'll tell you why. Because when we first started having our problems with Justice Michael MacGrath, we lodged a complaint to the Court of Appeal and to the Supreme Court. At the Supreme Court, they tried to dispose of our papers. That's the quote. You leave your papers here, they will be disposed of. We appealed to the Supreme Court about the refusal of their staff to accept our appeal papers. And it was Justice Donal O'Donnell, this same man, who came in over the top and issued a document which had no heading on it, no title, no signature. It didn't even have page numbers. And it was a cover-up for what Michael McGrath was doing. It was blatant, in your face. And I called him a criminal at the time, and I'm calling him a criminal again for what he did. It was an open fraud on both the High Court and on the Supreme Court. And we followed that up by lodging criminal complaints against him up at the CCJ. So now we have, first of all, there's a fraud committed by Michael McGrath in contempt of his own court, a criminal fraud. We catch him open-handed at it and we complain about it. They cover up, first of all, for McGrath. And O'Donnell writes another clever piece of what I called at the time legalistic tripe, which it was. We then lodge criminal complaints against him. Then in comes Colin Daly as the president of the district court, and he tries to cover up the criminal complaints. So then we lodged a criminal complaint against him. So what happens to Daly? Daly gets promoted. What's happened to McGrath? He's been nudged up to be a temporary ad hoc judge of the Court of Appeal. What happens to O'Donnell? Now we hear that he's going to be promoted to be the next Chief Justice. And all this time there are criminal applications pending at the CCJ which are being unlawfully held up. It might as well be if they just got up on the podium, the lot of them, with their wigs and gowns and stuck two fingers up to the lot of us. Because that's what's going on here. Don't forget, guys, the people who have nominated them, the Justice Committees, the so-called Judicial Advisory Appointments Board, the Judicial Council, the Minister for Justice, Heather Humphreys at the moment. They are all being copied in to all of our complaints. O'Donnell features prominently in the Black Book. Look, we have to wake up, guys. I keep referring to them as a criminal franchise, a cabal of interconnected insiders who are making horses' backsides out of the lot of us. When are we going to wake up and realise what's going on? If there's enough of an uproar by the public to the appointment of this man to the top judicial appointment in the land, then maybe something might get done about it. It doesn't matter that he might have a sharp legal brain if he is dishonest, because that's where we have to go to get our ultimate decisions. You go to the Supreme Court, they've got to be impeccable. There can't be any whisper of a doubt that they are either dishonest, unethical, or are willing to circumvent the law in order to cover up the crimes of their colleagues. If they do that sort of stuff, they've got to go. As the Nigerian Supreme Court said, as I said earlier in my letter to McGrath, a corrupt judge is the greatest vermin, the worst thing ever to happen to any nation. Please think about what we've just said, guys, and watch this space. one by one together, we can make a difference.